Let's concentrate on interest rates because we have the yield on the 10-year Treasury now at 1.65%. As we said at the start of...
No,
sorry, 161. Sorry about that. 161. We've been all over the place.
Actually, it's 162, just clicked up. So it's bounced back from 159.
Lower 160s. We came in this morning, it was 170,
exactly.
And now it's 159, 160, 161. I need help, lots of it. Art Laffer's with us, former Reagan economist and Laffer Associates chairman. You know, what's going on here, Art? What is going on? The world is awash in free money. Where's this ride taking us?
Well, let me just say what the problems are. The problems are the rest of the world is not doing well economically. That's a fact. And that's something that's really weighing very heavily on the U.S. as well. Number two, the trade negotiations with China are not going as well as any of us would hope they would. But the president assures us he's going to get a deal, that China wants one. And I still believe he's correct on that. But that is weighing very heavily on the markets. And number three, there's no inflation, Stuart. There's no inflation anywhere in anything, and that keeps interest rates really, really low. And I think that's not a problem. The problem I see, the indicator I see that as a problem that tells me that the world is worried about recessions everywhere in the world except the U.S., and it's worried about China, is that gold prices are way too high. Gold is the last refuge of the cautious, and is the first refuge of the cautious. And so whenever they fear the world, they move into gold, and gold's been up 250 points in the last year. And that's a heck of a big increase, and that's a huge risk premium that people are putting on these markets. And that concerns me that they're not feeling good about the economy or feeling good about the country or the world.
Well, is all of this going to work? In Europe, they've got negative interest rates. They're printing money like unbelievably. Yes. Same story in Japan.
Crazy.
They've both got depressed economies. But it's not working, is it? All this money printing, all this stimulus, it's not working.
It doesn't work. I mean, you can't spend yourself into prosperity, Stuart. It's silly. And you can't tax yourself into wealth. It just doesn't make any sense. And Europe is just crazy. They're worried about income inequality. Well, you know something? They're going to get equality at zero. And they will not like that result whatsoever. The U.S. has the one beacon of hope. And the only worry I have is the elections in 2020. You know, if we get one of these guys like Warren or Bernie Sanders and stuff like that in there, that would be very seriously damaging to the U.S. economy. But other than that, I think the U.S. is the beacon of hope, and I think we're doing a great job. And I think the U.S., if it continues, will lead us, the world, out of desperation into prosperity.
But you say we might lead the rest of the world. But supposing the rest of the world drags us down, after all, if Japan, all of Europe, and even Australia...
If the rest of the world were booming, we'd be much higher markets, much higher prosperity than we are. We'd have 4%, 5% growth rates, Stuart, if the rest of the world were doing well. And, you know, that's the problem here, is the rest of the world is following old line tax and spend policies that don't work, and regulatory policies. And I think the first sign of revolution in the rest of the world is Brexit. I hope it works. I hope they get out of there, and I hope other countries follow suit. But until that happens, the U.S. has to be the leader. And it starts with a good deal with China, and we get a good deal with China. That market will rebound like you can't believe, Stuart. We'll get 5,000, 6,000 on the Dow on that. Wow. That's what will happen. And if Trump's correct, and I have no reason to not believe him, China wants this deal as much as we do. It's better for them.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, Art. What a day for you to appear.
I mean, I don't know what to say, except it's a very stressful time and very strenuous, and just my way is take a brown paper bag, put it over your mouth, and breathe calmly, and then, ooh. And once you get mellow, and sort of like the old Skeksis in the Lord of the Rings or whatever it was, be calm, cool, and collected.
What are you trying to do to me, Art Laffer? I mean, you're a great-grandfather. I'm a grandfather. You're telling me to mellow out? Good Lord, man. What's it?
I just had my fourth great-grandchild.
Your fourth great-grandchild.
How's that for neat?
Wow.
Fourth.
That's pretty neat.
Fourth.
That is fantastic. Cool? That's a bright spot on a day of financial decline. Love it, love it, love it. Art Laffer, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
See you soon.